Next up, we have Logan Hall, the defensive lineman out of Houston. And I say that term very purposefully, defensive lineman, as personally, I don't know with 100% certainty where Logan Hall should play at the next level. As you look at his frame, he played last season at, for example, 6'6", 275. That was the guy I watched on film. I don't necessarily know if he's a defensive tackle. I'll be honest. That's what I'm grading him as. That's what everybody is classifying him as. You go to the combine, and he did weigh in a little bit heavier, 283 rather than 275. So I'd like to think that's him actively trying to put on weight. But at 6'6", 280 even, I think that's still a frame that is close enough to where he could pretty easily play outside as well. He'd probably want to shed back down a little bit more, but it's interesting because a lot of the reasons that I have him graded decently high here on the inside, those grades are very good here. Outside, they would be maybe less impressive, and in some of the areas where I have him really docked on the inside would probably be more impressive on the outside. So, for example, first and foremost, his ability to anchor and display strength at the point of attack, fend off double teams, prevent the offensive lineman from reestablishing the line of scrimmage 2 yards, 3 yards in their favor, right? Just how are you able to hold up against the run? On the inside, frankly, it wasn't good, right? So in that regard, you say, well, put him on the edge, and that wouldn't be an issue. And you're probably right? I gave him a 9.5 out of 20 on the inside because I thought it was that big of a concern for me. For reference, that's the second lowest grade I've handed out in that category over the last 2 draft classes. And I saw, one of the notes I wrote was, can get absolutely washed at point of attack, particularly against double teams. And you're not going to see a lot of double teams as an edge rusher, right? So, maybe that's in favor of him kicking back outside. But if he is a DT, that is certainly a worry that I would have. On the flip side, with him being maybe a little bit lighter and, a good athlete. I shouldn't even say good. He's a great athlete. I didn't touch on his combine measurables and whatnot to start. He ran a 4.88 40-yard dash, a 4.44 shuttle, a 7.25 three-cone. All these times are in the top 90 percentile of defensive tackles who have participated at the combine historically, right? So in that regard, he displays freakishly athletic traits on the inside, and I think that helps him win there. But if you put him out on the edge, maybe some of those athletic traits would look a little bit more pedestrian, if that makes sense. So on the inside, I'm worried about him against the run. On the outside, I just think that you're kind of maybe diminishing what you get out of his athleticism, because inside now, his quickness, his explosiveness, his ability to change directions, very, very high on the inside. So I gave him a 16.5 out of 20, rather, excuse me, in terms of his pass rush ability, and I give him a 13.75 out of 15 in terms of his explosiveness. I thought that those two kind of went hand in hand in terms of an ability to get after the quarterback, get pressures on the quarterback. He could win a lot of times with his first step, and even if he wasn't, he could win with his hands. I thought he did a decent job, showing off the pass rush tool belt, whether it was, clubs, rips. One thing that I liked is he was getting off of a lot of blocks late with spins, so he was countering late, whereas a lot of guys you would just see, once they're blocked, they're blocked. That wasn't really the case with Logan Hall, and that goes for either facet as a pass rusher or run defender. Don't think that goes one way or the other, but, a high motor guy. I gave him an 8 out of 10 on motor. I gave him a 4 out of 5 on finishing and tackling, right? I think he's a good enough athlete to where he's agile enough and fluid enough to where he can bring guys down. He can contort his body a little bit and make some plays in space. I think that that's pretty unique for an interior defensive lineman. That was actually the second highest grade I gave anyone in that category this year, right? So you're seeing he's kind of a polarizing guy in terms of, I really like him as a pass rusher inside, less so as a run stuffer inside. One of my notes that I wrote was certain versatility across different subgroups, which is where I think that's maybe how you could find the best utilization of him, right? Maybe opposed to just pigeonholing him in as, say, a 3 technique. Maybe you're willing to, if you're a team that runs a bunch of different sub packages, maybe you're willing to move him up and down across the defensive front to try and find the best matchup for him, because I'm sure there's an offensive lineman on just about every team that's going to struggle going up against that 4.88 40 and that level of quickness and that motor, right? So I think that finding mismatches for him shouldn't be a problem. It's just how committed are you to doing that? Because if you're just a team that wants to draft him and sort of set him and forget him, I don't know if he's that guy. I think there is some, there's some coaching that needs to be done. There's some, there's some gentle care that needs to be given to Mr. Hall in terms of refining sort of what he does and where you're playing him. So in that regard, I like him as a prospect. I think there's still some work that needs to be done on the inside as a run defender. Particularly, I didn't mind him as a playmaker against the run, right? Like you would see, because occasionally he could just blow up a play with that quickness, right? He could get in on a play late with that motor. But in terms of just the raw stacking and shedding, your ability to sit there, recognize run as the ball is snapped, shoot your hands into the chest of the offensive lineman, fend them off, bench press them off, create some space. That way, while you're finding the ball with your eyes, you're able to shed with your hands and make a play. I thought that process, that's where a bit of concern is had, right? Because some of those guards and tackles were able to, at times, I think, fend off the sort of extension of that. When I say he needs to extend his arms and get the tackles off him, right? He doesn't have a ton of strength to be inside. So even though maybe he was trying, maybe he had good initial placement with his hands, sometimes offensive linemen were able to just motor right through that and get him 2, 3, 4 yards downfield, which obviously isn't good for anybody. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys in this one. I like Hall. I think there's a lot of upside, but I also think there could be some downside depending on where he's used and how he's used. But I liked what I saw, and if he takes that motor, that's one thing I'll say. If he takes that motor, the 8 out of 10 that I gave him, that I thought was rather impressive, and he commits that to mastering his craft, whatever that is at the next level, whether that is DN, D tackle, whether it's 5 tech, 4 tech, 3 tech, whatever it is, I think that he could be successful. He was a guy that a lot of people had slipping in, I should say, rather, late into round 1. So if you get him in round 2 here, that's totally fine. That is totally fine. And I would say that for a team that's looking to, improve their presence on the inside in terms of an ability to create some pressure on the quarterback, I don't mind that pick at all. I would say that is a good usage of draft capital. But with that being said, if you thought this was a good usage of your time, just a good little discussion here, nothing too crazy. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what your thoughts are on Logan Hall. I'm assuming most of you who are here just saw that he was drafted to your team, so I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the selection and ultimately where he went, because that'll be something I'm obviously keeping an eye out for with so many questions about his schematic fit. But I'm imagining he's going to be a 3 technique based on the fact that he's still actively putting on weight, it appears, and I think he could do good. He just has to he's just got to have some work done against the run, I would say. So with that being said, that's all I have for you guys today. I'm Mike Up, now I'm Mike out. Peace, guys. Hopefully I will see you next time.